the U.S.'s rejection of crypto was, I would say, the biggest counterbalancing force against our industry. So you have a counterbalancing force that disappears, and then it goes completely in the direction where it becomes a force that accelerates the industry and legitimizes it and makes it clear to institutions, to your point about the announcements, that they can do transactions now and implement blockchain-related infrastructure, which is obviously great for Chainlink because we've been working with these institutions for years, and now we just have a huge amount of deals that are just converting to, oh, time to go live.
Chainlink co-founder Sergey Nazarov, welcome back.
Happy to be back. Thank you for having me.
All right, you were here yesterday. You heard Sam and I talk a little bit about our takeaway, and it really was this regulatory conversation. We wouldn't be able to be sitting here today talking about the announcements we're talking about without the progress that's been made in the United States. Patrick Witt will be joining you on stage later today. Curious to hear what you want to talk about with him, what you're hoping to draw out from that conversation.
So I just wanted to clarify the reasons why the White House and the Trump administration are into crypto, and I think people should really understand that it is really a priority for them from the point of view of the technology or the technologies that are going to power the US's future. AI is obviously a technology that's a priority. Cryptocurrency and blockchains are a big priority. So I think there's a real genuine commitment from the Trump administration, and Patrick, who is the executive director of the White House's kind of task force on blockchain stuff. So there's a real commitment, and that commitment has now reverberated. There's been enough time for it to reverberate through the different agencies. So if you look at the chairman of the SEC, Paul Atkins, I've met with him a few times. A bunch of people in our industry have met with him. There's really a different level of commitment from those agencies, because now you have leaders put in place essentially by the Trump administration that are there to make crypto grow and be successful in the United States. And that is a very serious force for our industry, because for two reasons. One, the U.S.'s rejection of crypto was, I would say, the biggest counterbalancing force against our industry. So you have a counterbalancing force that disappears, and then it goes completely in the direction where it becomes a force that accelerates the industry and legitimizes it and makes it clear to institutions, to your point about the announcements, that they can do transactions now and implement blockchain-related infrastructure, which is obviously great for Chainlink because we've been working with these institutions for years, and now we just have a huge amount of deals that are just converting to, oh, time to go live.
Sergey, I think if we looked at really 2020 to 2024, a lot of people would have said that the way that the Biden administration handled it was over-politicized, right? It was really a badge almost to be against crypto. And I think to your point, it's kind of flipped the other way. I really think that the U.S. is such a hub of innovation that it should completely be bipartisan. And I'm just wondering, what do you think is the message that the Democratic leadership really needs to learn about why this is something they should also embrace?
So I think what happened is that FTX backfired big time on the Democrats. So the founder of FTX was a really big donor.
Yeah.
And in contrast to Terra or other failures in our industry, FTX did have a significant amount of U.S. users. And so the Democrats, because they were somehow tied to Sam Bankman-Fried, had to take a very hard stance against crypto. So that I think his goals was to accelerate our industry. So his goals from the point of view of donating to the Democrats was not to decelerate, was to accelerate. And it was working until it really wasn't working, unfortunately. And so since that happened, the Democrats, I think, have had a very biased and skewed view against crypto, the FTX thing. Now, the FTX thing is behind us. It's well in the past now. Then what happened was the Republicans decided to go pro-crypto. That didn't help the Democrats love crypto, right? Because now the opposing party is kind of the party supporting crypto and getting the benefits of crypto, both in a donation point of view and a voting point of view. And I have heard from Democrats that they feel that the crypto industry is like an arm of the Republican Party, right? Which, isn't the situation you necessarily want to be in. You want to be, as you said, in a bipartisan situation. Now, just to be clear, there are very thoughtful, Democrat leaders like Senator Gillibrand, who's actually the senator from New York, who's organizing the Democrats, and there are very thoughtful Republican leaders like Tim Scott, the chairman of the Senate Banking and Finance Committee from the Republican side. And so what's driving those very thoughtful leaders in both of those groups is the value of the blockchain industry. So there is a lot of economic value, not only in the crypto industry, but actually in the blockchain industry and its effect on the financial system. Not in the sense of creating more cryptocurrencies that people can speculate on, but in the sense that you can have financial institutions tokenizing bonds, stocks, commodities, funds, everything in the financial system. So I think what's happening now is you're starting to have like a realization that the market structure bill and what our industry is about is not just about highly speculative crypto things. It's about that, and it's about the next iteration of the financial system, which is what we've been doing our best to clearly communicate. I think the Democrats, once they understand the benefits of our industry's technology to the U.S. financial system, it'll become an even more bipartisan issue. I think the Republicans are already bought into that idea. So the Republicans are already bought into the idea that in addition to whatever the value of cryptocurrencies is, or Bitcoin as a reserve or whatever it's going to do, the value of the technology for the financial system is so large that you don't want the hub of innovation to be outside the U.S. You want the U.S. to be the leading provider of high-quality blockchain technology for the financial system.
Just to double click on that, we have an interview coming out tomorrow with Reid Hoffman that I did, and I asked him the same question, and almost verbatim he said SBF and FTX really ruined it for the Democrats, and he as a Democratic supporter really said he thinks just Warren took it way too far in what they're doing, and totally agrees that this should be an innovation play. This should be us thinking about how do we make the U.S. the capital of crypto in general. It should not be an issue that we have to argue about. It should be about how do we move finance into the future, and this is the way to do it. So I think that's a great point.
Sergey, I know you've been in the room with both Democrats and Republicans who are debating some of these topics around crypto and blockchain. What are some of the sticking points that the Democrats still don't understand, or that education gap that's still there that needs to be addressed?
So after working with senators and congressmen for basically this year, it's my first experience with them, but over the course of the year I've met with a lot of them, some of them multiple times. They really have a very large breadth of issues. So they're not just covering one issue. They need to understand like 20 issues. And I think what's happened is that because the Republicans have gotten more donations from crypto, and because they've gotten more votes from crypto, they've taken more time to learn what DeFi is and what it isn't. And what it isn't is almost as important as what it is, in the sense that there's a lot of confusion still about why crypto is good or bad. So I'll give you an example. From the Democrats' point of view, I still feel a sense that all cryptocurrency stuff, all blockchain technology is encouraging money laundering, encouraging illicit finance. That's actually quite wrong, in the sense that the percentage of illicit finance in the traditional system is up to 5%. The amount of illicit finance in the crypto system is below 1%. So actually the transparency of blockchains makes illicit finance and money laundering harder with cryptocurrencies than it is in the traditional system. But that's always surprising, right? That's also surprising to Republicans. The real point is that Bitcoin's history or initial beginning as a form of payment for dark markets, then this SBF stuff, some of those failures, and the idea that cryptocurrency is related to money laundering, I think that's one of the things that President Trump, before he liked cryptocurrency, referenced as one of the main reasons he didn't like it. But see, in that case also, once people understand that the technology doesn't encourage money laundering, it actually makes it harder than the current system, I think things become very different. So I think that the Democrats are now in the process of understanding how blockchains actually work, what decentralized finance is versus isn't. And the problem is that everyone in DC has been hammered for a long time before this administration with how evil and bad blockchains are from a money laundering point of view, and the SBF thing obviously didn't help at all. So I think there's still some basic understanding of money laundering is harder with blockchains. The financial system benefits from Oracle networks and smart contracts powering it. And you actually want to be the place where all that technology is made. That's how you can exude some amount of oversight or control over it. If you do what's been happening for the 4 to 5 years before Trump, you're just going to push it all offshore, and you're going to have no control. So, that's kind of the scary alternative that we present to them, which is true. And so that's what they definitely don't want.
What I also think is interesting is what the pundits and the press and the politicians were saying about Robinhood, about PayPal, were all the same talking points. Anything that felt uncomfortable, they resisted until it became adopted. And I think we are seeing, especially at a show like this, how many people from the JP Morgans on down are adopting this technology. And to me, that's a wondrous way of looking at that innovation kind of pushes forward regardless.
Yeah. The JP Morgan folks and all the other banks and large institutions, they're adopting it based on the merits of the technology, right? And DeFi is growing based on the merits and the value it provides, not because it's involved in money laundering. And this is just a misconception. So this is a big misconception that's been perpetuated in DC for a long time that we're now, rapidly chipping away at and getting rid of. And there's certain groups that understand that already, and there's other groups that don't. Generally speaking, if you're a congressman or if you're a senator and you don't really understand how the technology works, you often default to what the crowd wisdom is. And the crowd wisdom is still in this world of, blockchains introduce risk. And that's not true. Blockchains reduce risk. Smart contracts and Oracle networks reduce risk for how financial transactions work, how transparent they are, how much the illicit finance they can do. And so once you reach that understanding, the way that President Trump did, I think you go in with that understanding, you go in that direction. So I do think that understanding still doesn't exist, but it's rapidly growing, and we're doing a lot to make sure that it does.
We got to let you go, but I have to ask you this morning, we heard Patrick Witt at Ripple Swell say that market structure will pass by the end of the year. Do you think that's possible, given the conversations you've been in?
I think it's possible. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's possible. I think the government needs to turn back on. That's going to be needed a little bit. I don't know if they have lights there in the room where they do the votes. Do the voting things work? They need to turn the government back on. That's a factor. But I think there's only 1 or 2 issues left to hammer out, so I do think it's possible.
Sergey, thank you so much for having us at the event, and thank you for
My
joining
pleasure.
us to kick off the stream.
Thank you for having me.